I was rising today to speak about an issue which should be under the category of unfinished business and a priority for the American people, and that's unemployment insurance. In this case, emergency unemployment compensation. And the trauma that so many people have lived through, not just over weeks, or it's now months, and of course that was preceded by a very difficult economy. The bill that is in front of us now is bipartisan, and that's good news. That's the way it should be. It's a bipartisan bill to provide what can only be described as an essential lifeline for individuals who have been out of work. Millions of people out of work in the so-called long-term unemployment category. This lifeline is often directly connected to the life and the daily struggles of middle-class families who rely upon this program to stay afloat as they're seeking work. I think sometimes there's a misconception, or some might want to make this argument in a deliberate way, but I think often it's mostly a misconception that somehow emergency unemployment compensation is for people that are out of work but not looking for work. These are folks that are looking day after day, week after week. Now, I would have preferred that this agreement would be a longer-term agreement than just the 5 months that are being proposed in the agreement. But it's very important that we finally reach a point where we can pass a measure that will provide protection for folks and support for them as they're looking for work. Thursday, we had a procedural vote, which, as I mentioned, was bipartisan, to move the bill forward. And thankfully, the Senate this week will be voting on the bill itself. We hope that the House would follow suit and provide this kind of much-needed boost for those who are out of work. The numbers are just staggering. When you look at the numbers, for example, in Pennsylvania, almost 75,000 people immediately stopped receiving unemployment benefits when the emergency unemployment compensation expired on December the 28th. I can't even imagine what that was like for an individual or for an individual and his or her family. 3 days after Christmas, right in the middle of the holiday season, for so many families. It's supposed to be a time of joy, so a time when families are together and spending lots of time together in ways they can't often do during the year. To have that run out on December the 28th had to be horrific for those individuals. The other number, in addition to the 75,000 that I mentioned for Pennsylvania, that as of March the 15th, so between December 28th and March 15th, over 110,000 Pennsylvanians have lost their benefits. Through May, and that's the period covered by the bill would go to June the 1st and be retroactive to December the 28th. But through May, it's estimated that 158,400 Pennsylvanians and almost 2.8 million Americans will have lost their emergency unemployment compensation. And so they're the folks that have been hurting and will be hurting unless we take action. And of course, they're the ones that would benefit if we can take action. Unemployment insurance doesn't just provide an economic relief to that individual and his or her family. It's also an economic jump starter. For example, in 2012, Mark Zandi, a respected economist, he has roots in Pennsylvania, I'll say that for the record, but he's respected across the board. Mark Zandi found that for every dollar of emergency unemployment compensation, there was $1.52 in new economic activity created. So it's that old spend a buck and what do you get for the buck? What's the return on investment? In this case, in terms of emergency unemployment insurance, you spend $1 and you get $1.52 in return. I don't care what market you're in, that's a pretty good return, especially when it's helping people so substantially. So this is really about providing that lifeline for those families at a time when they really need it, but it's also about the economic benefits for the rest of us. A lot of people have heard these numbers as well. Analyses that specifically focus on the extension of benefits in 2014. They've also shown, by using other data to indicate the impact on the economy. Giving an example, the Economic Policy Institute has estimated that extending unemployment benefits in 2014 would generate $37.8 billion in economic activity. So that's the impact for this year, as found by the Economic Policy Institute, $37.8 billion. So this is about all of us. This isn't about a group of people over here that we hope to help. That's wonderful. It's a wonderful sentiment. But this is about whether or not they're going to have an opportunity, just a fair shot, to have a chance to get back into the economy, to get back into work. But it's also about the rest of us in another way as well. It's about whether or not we're going to make sure that everyone has an opportunity for that fair shot. And of course, it's also about the rest of us because we benefit when this program continues. The economic boost, the $1.52 for the buck that you spend on it, as well as the $37.8 billion of activity. And finally, let me just say a word about, we've heard about the numbers, we hear about the rationale for continuing this program, both of which are very compelling, and I would argue not just compelling, but urgent. But what about the real people? I met two people in my hometown, just one I had met before, and a second person that I had not met before. But just to give an example of two individuals in their lives, and this is in where I live, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Lackawanna County, which has a very high unemployment rate, unfortunately. The first I'll mention is Joe Walsh. Joe's lived in my hometown for all of his life. He was a tradesman for 40 years, so he had a very specific skill that allowed him to work and support his family. He worked as a superintendent for 14 years, and in 2008, the company he worked for needed to downsize, and he lost his position and immediately went on unemployment insurance. He worked on and off over the years with contractors who would need temporary workers, but he was unable to find anything steady, a story that we've heard too often. On December the 28th of 2013, that day that I mentioned before, Joe exceeded his unemployment insurance benefits and hasn't received any support since then, but he continues to look for work and to file his claims. Joe is married, he has 3 grown children. He said he feels, quote, lucky, unquote, because his wife works and she's able to keep their household afloat in a very difficult time. Joe is 63 years old and had all of those years, all those decades, with a skill and a work ethic that allowed him to work. And he said that if he had a mortgage, he wouldn't have been able to, if he had a mortgage now, he wouldn't be able to survive. He finds it difficult to find the kind of work he had before, tradesman work that requires a skill. The second person that we had a press conference with is someone that I've met in our neighborhood, and that we go to the same church, Vera Radis. Vera has spoken to me before about her own circumstances. She started at, or I should say over the years, was with several banking institutions. She was employed steadily from February of 1995 until July of 2013. So all those years doing good work for 2 different banking institutions. She has a Bachelor of Science degree, a college degree from Kutztown University, and has an associate's degree from Luzerne County Community College. So she has the education that you often need to find the job that you want, and she had all that experience, almost 20 years of experience. Now she's left with volunteering and looking for work. She's attended all of the Pennsylvania Career Link at Lackawanna County's workshops, spends at least 3 days a week at Career Link searching for work over and over and over again. So these are the people, and not just tens of thousands, not just hundreds of thousands, but literally millions others like them across the country. It's time that we did the job we're elected to do, is to put this emergency unemployment compensation program back into place to give people just a fair shot, nothing else. That's all they're asking for, is a fair shot to find work, to support their families, and to be part of the economy and part of this country in the world of work that they were so much a part of for most of their lives. So, Madam President, I would seek that all of us come together in a bipartisan fashion, get this passed, and get it to the House. And I hope our House colleagues are listening not just to my voice, but more importantly, listening to the voices of the people they represent, to the Veras of the world and the Joes of the world that I just spoke of. And with that, I would read the following. Madam President, I have 7 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.